Hey everybody, and welcome to our interview with Dynamic Consultants Group. Today, we have our VP of Sales, Josh Santiago, and we're going to do this interview to talk about how the partner community inside of Microsoft is beginning to change and the way that some of you, as our valued partners, can make adjustments to still gain revenue and build value inside of the Microsoft ecosystem. So we just want to talk about the benefits of starting a Microsoft practice, how a partner can get up and rolling in the Microsoft community, and what are the costs involved, what are some of the options that they have in order to get up and running quickly. There's so much going on right now in the Microsoft world. I mean, differences in Power Apps, Power Platform, Power BI, so much new stuff going on that it's really hard for partners to keep up. So in your mind, kind of what should a partner be thinking of whenever they're starting a practice? Is it something that they really need to be full stack, or is it something that they can just be a Power BI partner? What are the ways that Microsoft wants to be engaged with right now?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Hi, everybody. Thank you for your time today. It's a great pleasure to be here. So one of the biggest things that I think has shifted over the years, specifically in terms of the way Microsoft operates, is really they've transitioned away from software as a service, right, to more platform as a service. And I think the biggest thing that we have to consider there is how that affects the partner ecosystem and how partners really have to be mobile and responsive to the way Microsoft changes. And so with that, we've seen a dramatic shift in full stack partners, specifically because they're able to leverage the opportunities that their customers are bringing them without having to send them to additional partners, their ability to capture more of the revenue stream, their ability to just branch out into different regions and different areas that they might not have been involved in before. So I think that being a full stack partner or having leveraged partnerships that you're able to utilize to get to that place is really beneficial, especially in today's market.
And I think that if you start looking at how a customer service environment would work, even how new implementations work, you almost always have a collection of products. Very rarely is it someone just wants customer engagement.
Right.
They're wanting field service and project service and Power BI and AI and machine learning and so many different things that it just becomes really difficult for a partner to be able to do all of that.
That's exactly right.
But you want to keep it there, right? I mean, you want the customer service experience to really all exist within one partner.
Yes.
So I think kind of building that network of people is going to be really important for partners to do.
Absolutely, and that's critical moving forward.
So what are you thinking the next move is for partners who want to begin starting a practice? Is it something that they can just hire an individual who knows part of the platform and get up and rolling? Or is it really that they need to build out an entire staff to be able to support these technologies?
I think it's a mixture of both. I think you can get started on some products and some projects fairly easily. Power BI is one that comes to mind that you can do relatively easy with maybe just a data scientist and a designer. But I think that for the vast majority of the core enterprise products, I think you're going to find that that's very difficult to do with just a few people. So you're going to find yourself building out a full practice before you know it. And that can be really dangerous, especially from a cost perspective. If you really don't have a number of customers either already in the pipeline or projects already closed, you run the risk of having people just sitting on the bench, and that can be very expensive.
Especially something like finance and operations, where you may need a staff of 7 to 10 people just to really start up and do a full-scale enterprise level project. You don't necessarily have to work with all enterprises, of course,
right.
But some people are focused more on small to medium-sized business. But in all of those instances, I would think you still need a group of sales team members, marketing team members, minimum customer service and some implementation support,
Absolutely.
Project managers. There's just a lot of infrastructure around starting up one of these practices, especially if you're an MSP or you've been traditionally focused on a lot of software sales or
Right.
even product sales such as an ISV. Transitioning over to that customer service and more of a services-based model where that's making up 60 to 70% of your revenue could be really difficult because it just comes up with a lot of upfront cost.
Right, exactly.
So we're living in a platform as a service world. You mentioned it earlier that it's no longer about software as a service, it's more about the platform and building reusable components that we can then roll out to the masses, right?
Yes.
How does a partner, especially, that has been so used to doing implementation, how do they make that transition to platform as a service, which is more now focused on citizen developers?
I think the easiest way to do that is by empowering your people to go learn the product. Because the more you can engage your technical, your functional, and even your salespeople to understand what Microsoft's offering today, from whether that be Power Apps to Power Platform to Power BI, and really the extensibility of the whole platform. If they really truly understand that, then it becomes a much easier conversation from the sales cycle to the delivery team to the post-go live process. It really becomes that constant conversation of, okay, what do you want to add on next? But then it goes beyond that. It goes to the customer level. When you start showing them the extensibility of the platform and you start showing them the ease of use, and we all know citizen developers are great, but at the same time, there is a limitation, right? We as partners have a fundamental understanding of there's things that citizen developers, they're going to get themselves into areas that they are well beyond their skill set and functionally beyond what the system is capable of doing.
But that's exactly the point, though.
Yes.
I mean, the exact point is we want to empower them to get waist deep into something that they don't know what they're doing, because that ups their level of sophistication, it ups their level of ability to change an organization.
Exactly.
And you find those people that are disruptors in the company, right? They're the ones that have the Access database running on their computer to do something that they're not telling anybody about. Those are the ones that we want to move that into the Power Apps world, and by empowering them we can. But to me, it's more of a focus on training, right? Shifting your partner focus to be one of training rather than implementation.
Once you get off of that mindset, where it's always these massive implementations and it's these big giant projects, and once you get down to this granular level of either the department or the business unit, and they're like, hey, we need to do 3 functions. Okay, great, empower your people and train them how to do that. Then they go and build it, and now you have a team. We all know about Samet and Heathrow Airport. We know about Safe Like Glass. We know about several of the other key, and even Pepsi Cola, the bottler that Microsoft has been using very recently to talk about the citizen developer community and how they've been able to not only expand the platform, but really be able to do things that before have been just either impossible or cost prohibitive from a development perspective. So that training is very fundamental to changing this.
But this scares partners to death.
Yes, it does.
And I can tell you, we work with 30 to 40 partners all around the globe, and they're all trying to figure out, how do we sell projects in a world of citizen developer? And is it putting an end to consulting as we know it?
Right.
And the answer to that may be yes. Like, it may be a different consulting world 5-10 years from now than it looks today.
Absolutely.
It may be different a year from now than it looks today.
Right. I think we've seen a fundamental shift in the way consulting operates already as a result of COVID. But I think beyond that, it just goes to show that partners have to be more agile. They have to pivot much quicker than they used to. So staying at that bleeding edge of technology is important. But beyond that, really, the way partners, and the way we've been telling our partners that they can really capture some of this momentum, is not shy away from citizen developers, not push them off, but embrace them. Make it a community effort. Show the community that you represent, that you're a part of, the user groups, that you're involved. Because what you want to do is you want to give them the ability to run with it as far as they can. And when they break it, who are they going to call? Not the partner that's always like, no, spend X amount of dollars an hour using us. No, they're going to call the partner that said, hey, you can do this yourself. Do it yourself. And then when they break it, they're going to go, help.
Yeah, who do I call?
So that's how you get around this whole mindset of, well, I don't want citizen developers, because there is a part of the community that they want the traditional consulting model. So we have to be agile in the approach of what we're doing. And I think that's part of it.
And the citizen developer is only going to lead to an explosion of the number of Power Apps and the number of people that are involved in this entire network of, the community part of what we're doing. And so the more people we can get engaged, the more companies that are going to use it, the more apps that are going to exist, and it is going to accelerate the pace for the need of consulting more than it's going to diminish it. Absolutely. And I think that's the part that a lot of partners just miss. Is they miss the, how do I go sell a $2 million project when maybe all the customer wants is a $50,000 Power App. And that is something that I think we're all making a shift in. But we're starting to see more partners become more focused on education. We're seeing them become more focused on events, like you said, being a part of the community, standing up their own events, creating their own virtual events. And COVID has really made a big change in the way that they're doing that.
100%. And that's really, to your point, that's going to drive a lot of that, because It's a lot easier for the business unit or even the mid-management to make purchasing decisions. This is one thing that I think sometimes partners forget about. Yes, we want the $2 million projects. I think everyone in this room would agree we love those. But at the same time, that has to go through a very rigorous purchase process, at least at every company I've ever worked with and worked for. But a $50,000 project, a 30, a 40, a 10, some of those are under the threshold that the business unit can just make the decision for. So what we see here is now the business unit, sales or finance, marketing, operations, manufacturing, warehousing, has just made the decision to get Power Apps because they see this cool tool that they want to use. Well, then it's our responsibility as consultants to come in and show them and train them and teach them the extensibility of what they can do next and how it ties into their other systems. And then now you've taken a $10,000 project or a $50,000 project and you've turned it into a $2 million system-wide overhaul of finance and operations and sales and manufacturing. And now it's turned into this massive thing because they realize the connections with CDS. They realize the extensibility with Adobe, with SAP, integrating all of these systems, and some of the changes that Microsoft has done with the way you can now access legacy platforms using Power Apps and creating workflows that automatically use standalone products that heretofore have been non-existent or integratable. I think that's a big change.
Well, it's the snowball, right?
Exactly.
It's the you build one Power App and then you're hooked.
Yep.
And we're seeing that all over with companies that are doing it. And I think as long as partners can figure out a way to pivot, they can then be more entrenched with those smaller departments that maybe they've never talked to before.
Exactly.
But as a sales rep, how hard is it, because you're now dealing with individuals that may or may not have been the same decision makers you were working with 5 years ago?
Correct.
These are now departmental managers. It's individuals that are empowered to make smaller purchasing decisions. Mm-hmm. Is that an easier sell? Is it a harder sell? Like how does the sales process for a partner pivot to make sure that they're working with those different decision makers?
I think from the side of marketing, we've been talking about relationship sales for the past 3 years. I think this is just the continuation of that. It really goes to creating those meaningful relationships at the user level, the management level, the department level, because it's not the CIO that's making the final decision anymore. It's not the CEO. So yes, you can spend 8 hours a week on the golf course with the CEO, and sure, you may win the project. But at the same time, I've seen multi-million-dollar implementations. I know of a personally multi-million-dollar implementation that was completely canceled after a user, just basic everyday guy, gal, walked in the room and said, you know what, there's something about this consulting team I'm not a fan of. And because of that, the management suite decided to pull the entire project because a user didn't like the partner or didn't like something the partner had done. So
it's influence, right? It's
exactly that influencer. Exactly, that's a great word, and we're accustomed to hearing it in the news all the time. We're accustomed to our children talking about, Instagram influencers and things like that. But we have to think about that too. There's project influencers. How many times does a user maybe come across something about Dynamics and go, wow, this is really cool, I want it? Well, now, gone is the days of them just running that up to IT and IT just batting it back down and saying, we don't have budget, we don't have time, it's too big, too expensive. Now they're starting to go, okay, well, we can just do this little piece and we can do it in our department. So the great thing about that too is, yes, the instant you hear that, you go, well, that's just siloed data. That's just another disparate system. But that's the difference between Microsoft, is it's platform as a service. So even though you may have disparate departments, the integration is already there. All you have to do is turn it on. That's the power of CDS, right?
Well, CDS is really more about kind of that central repository for the data. It doesn't really matter where it's at. It doesn't really matter where it's coming from. You just got to build the pipes in order to get it there.
Exactly.
And that is the beauty of it, is Microsoft not only has the platform for building the data, they also have the platform for constructing all those pipes.
Yes.
I think that's where their power is because they have that, and really no other platform as a service vendor is positioned in a way to be able to offer it right now.
Absolutely.
So there's always this catch-22 that happens. You need a project in order to win a project.
Right.
Sales has very rarely ever walked in and said, hey customer, we've never done this before. You should let us practice on you.
Right.
Right? I mean, that's really hard.
Yes.
So how does a company who's wanting to begin in the Microsoft world, how do they make that transition to get their first project? So many times you need your first project in order to win your first project. and that's just a vicious loop. How do you bridge that gap? Are there ways that you can kind of establish yourself inside of a vertical market without actually having that depth of experience?
I think the easiest thing to do right now is leveraging Microsoft's new vision of co-sell. That's become really systemic within the greater ethos of the partnership program, right? And so where I see a lot of partners really excelling is either through co-sell, through contracting, being able to quickly grab resources that have experience, because really at the end of the day, the customer doesn't care necessarily whether or not you're the one doing the work, whether it's another partner. They just want to know that it's going to get done right. And so the biggest thing you can instill in your prospects is confidence. If they believe that you can accomplish what you're telling them you can, you have a far greater chance of winning that. Well, how do you get that confidence? You get that confidence in the experience of doing a project. So to your point a second ago, that circular funnel, right, where you're trapped in this revolving door where you can't get out of, or you need a project to get a project. I think going into it with either contractors, white label partners, co-sell partners that you're able to leverage their previous experiences will give you the confidence that you need to be able to close those first couple of deals. And once you've done that, then it's a far easier conversation to have where you can point back to your own examples and your own customers and your own experiences.
And I think too, I mean, the Microsoft community, it's a small network, right? I mean, everyone kind of knows everybody. We're at the same events. We're all at User Group Summit. We're all at Microsoft Inspire. These are all ways that we can get connected.
Right.
And so because the community is small, you generally are only about one level away from really having that depth of expertise that you need.
Absolutely.
And so many of that time, it's not just about the project, it's also about the people.
Yes.
It's about, do they have the industry expertise? Have they worked in the industry themselves? Like, what are the guts of how that they actually do those projects? Proven methodologies, there's all kinds of things that you get just from having another partner that can step in and help you. And you know, in the past, partners have been really hesitant to do that kind of stuff. Making sure they can find people that they trust is really important.
Absolutely.
So how do you make sure, especially in the white label world where you may have subcontractors that are doing work, you may bring in third-party vendors, ISVs, those types of things, how do you ensure that you find people that have integrity and people that you can trust?
I'd say the biggest part of that is obviously first off having strong agreements in place. I think we all know that. But beside that, I think it's a matter of finding those that have the experience, that have already done the projects, that have a proven track record of success, is going to go a long way in ensuring not only that you can deliver, but that the organization that you're working with, a partner, the co-sell program, whatever it is that you're doing, has the ability to actually do that work.
We hear it so many times from our partners. Why should they get started in a practice when they have no experience in it? And we're talking about systems that could be very critical to a customer. I mean, why should they even want to get involved in these projects? Why should they want to take the risk?
Yeah, I think one of the reasons that they want to take the risk is the ability, A, to be able to implement the system, but B, also to mitigate some of those factors, right? So the biggest risks associated with implementations are, these are critical business systems. These are systems that can't go down, if you will. When a sales team can't function in the field, when an operations team is down, when you've got manufacturing floors that can't operate, business grinds to a halt. And so the biggest risk that a partner has is breaking one of those systems. So the thing that they need to do a good job of is making sure that they have either built the team or partnered with the team that can deliver those things, because you get one shot with this, right? So if you break one of these systems, if you stop a production floor for a day, you've not only jeopardized your relationship with the customer, but you've also jeopardized their relationship with Microsoft, because now they're wondering, well, is it the system or is it my partner? And you don't want to do that either way. So again, having a strong implementation team, having a strong ability to present yourself not only as that partner that can do it, but actually doing it is very important. And there's also the people factor, right? That's a big risk, because as we've all done implementations, whether that's SharePoint, whether that's Office 365, all the way through Dynamics, every implementation has its ups and downs. Every implementation has the people factor to it, where they may want to do it one way, and that's not best practice. So one of the things that you have to be able to do as a partner is come in and be a little forceful, obviously with respect, but at the same time you have to be able to deliver that product and say this is the best way that it needs to be done. But again, that only comes from experience as well.
And I think just overall reducing churn in your customer base.
Exactly.
I mean, if you think about that, how that a customer is they're going to want these things.
Yeah.
Microsoft's doing a great job at marketing this stuff. They've built an amazing platform as a service model. Customers are going to want it, and they're going to go buy it.
Yes.
So if you are not in a position to be able to support them, you're going to risk losing that business and have it go to another partner.
Right.
So you're going to either have churn, or you're going to just have major implementation projects that you don't get to see any part of because you haven't taken that time to establish these practices.
Absolutely.
So we talked a little bit about subcontractors and how you build some of those relationships. If you start looking at an ISV type relationship, what are the benefits of someone partnering with an ISV company? And we're not an ISV, so we're not plugging any product here today.
Right.
But working with ISVs who may have a very, very focused vertical market that they're working in, whether it's real estate, whether it's wealth management, whether it's finance, whether it's accounting, whatever they're really good at. What are some of the benefits of a partner engaging with an ISV in order to kind of do that co-sell model?
Sure. I think the best thing that they can do for that is really trying to pick vertical markets that they either have experience in, a passion in, or have tribal knowledge in, right? We've all done implementations outside of our core focus. We've all done things that haven't been maybe necessarily in our direct line of work, but I think sometimes we have a passion for it. Myself, for example, I have an absolute love of manufacturing, but I have no clue about it. But it's one of those things I'm passionate about. I find it very interesting taking a piece of plastic pellet and turning it into a toy or something like that. I find that the start to finish very interesting. So for me, that's a passion. But in your organization, find the things that you're passionate about. Find the things that you have experience with. Maybe you've done a one-off for a previous customer that was something not in your wheelhouse, but something that you could do more of. And then try to find ISVs that match those experiences and those skill sets. Because then you can leverage not only the tribal knowledge, but then you can also leverage that passion and experience to then bounce off of ideas, bounce off of new things, and be able to get into those markets a little easier.
And if we think about, Power Apps is so big now. There are people that are building things, and if you don't have something for it, stick around like 2 days, and there will be an app out there that does what you want it to do. So getting involved with those ISV markets, it's becoming easier. Yes. If you're passionate about something, if you have an idea, go build it.
Right.
It's not really that hard. The beauty of this is platform as a service, right? So any idea that you can come up with, if you can dream it, you can do it.
Correct.
And that's just an amazing part of what Microsoft's built. And don't want this to turn into a sales pitch for Microsoft,
right.
But we're talking about partners, but it does go hand in hand.
It does.
Because you have to be able to build solutions that work for the markets that you're targeting. And now we can do it fast. We don't have to have a team of 20 developers and an entire staff of trainers and customer support.
Absolutely.
Just in order to build an app. And that's becoming harder for partners to conceptualize how quick to market they can be.
Yes.
But it's also really exciting
yes.
to be able to kind of quickly go to market with some of those really cool apps that maybe you wouldn't have had the opportunity to do that 5 years ago. So there's always been this hesitancy in the partner community to either use subcontractors, especially offshore, partner with other companies to be able to do some of that work. Why do you think that hesitancy is there?
I think there's two fundamental differences there. One is the way we conceptualize a project. As European and US partners, one of the ways that we communicate, I think naturally, is one of concept. So when I say, Dustin, can you go make me a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? It's very easy for you to conceptualize what the peanut butter and jelly sandwich looks like, what it has on it, what's involved with it. So you're going to go to the kitchen, you're going to make it. You're not going to ask me if it needs strawberry or grape or if I want crust or don't want crust. You're just going to make one and you're going to bring it back to me. Now, if that's not what I want, I'm going to tell you, can you cut the crust off? Can you make it into triangles? Whatever. I think sometimes with offshore teams, it becomes much more difficult because A, you don't have that deep project interaction where you're working together on a regular basis. But I think also fundamentally there's a difference in the way offshore teams conceptualize certain types of projects. So when I say go make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, well, there's a specific set of requirements that needs to be given. And sometimes I think we, as the implementation team, fail to deliver on that. I don't think it's a failure of the offshore team. I think offshore teams are absolutely phenomenal. You give them a task, they accomplish it very efficiently and very effectively, but it's the communication that breaks down. And so when partners aren't strong communicators and aren't strong project leaders because they don't have the experience of doing the implementation, I think that just leads to disaster and hesitancy. So they may have done it in the past and been like, this doesn't work, or we've had to pull too much teeth to make it work. So then they don't want to do it. And that I think falls on Western culture as a whole, because we don't communicate as well as we should. We just say, go do this and expect it to be done. So I think when you use an offshore team, it's very critical that you have a well-defined documentation process for requirements gathering, for building the project, and so on. I think that really helps solve that core problem.
That's probably why that you see a lot more subcontractors and people hiring and using recruiting teams to hire. It's just because you end up having a little bit more control over that communication.
Absolutely.
But that doesn't necessarily make that a better answer.
Correct.
I think the solution is still communicate better.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
Figuring out how we do that is going to be critical to not just our own internal teams, but it's how we scale.
Yes.
How do we scale into these new practices and bring in new people if we already have communication breakdown inside of our company happening today?
Absolutely.
So I think as a company, making a culture of communication and making sure that we are passionate about the way we communicate and making sure that our people are trained and effective communicators is going to be really important for any partner that's wanting to break into a new market, especially if they've never been there before, and especially if they don't have any experience in that area before.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the other fold, right? So it was a twofold response. The first fold being the communication, the other side being the experience factor. So.
And again, we kind of go back to how do you get it if you don't have it?
Right.
You need partners, but you got to have that trust in those partners.
Absolutely.
In order to really be able to get those results.
Yes.
So I know if I'm going to have anybody make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, it's going to be you, Josh.
Yeah.
And I think the bigger thing that we have to think about is if you're going to have someone do consulting for you, should it be Dynamic Consultants Group? And yes, I'm getting ready to ask Josh to give a shameless plug for Dynamic Consultants Group. Because we do kind of have the best of both worlds in the sense that we have the consulting offshore as well as onshore resources that can help provide white label or staff aug, kind of all of those things. So Josh, tell us about why a partner should choose Dynamic Consultants Group in order to kind of have all of those pieces to their practice that they need.
I think that's a great question. So the biggest part of what sets us apart from a lot of co-sell partners and a lot of other organizations is we have the experience going back to CRM version 1, right? So we've been with Microsoft for a very long time. We've watched the platform grow and expand. We have a lot of very deep, meaningful relationships inside of Microsoft, whether that's with James Phillips all the way down to just developers and architects inside the community within Microsoft itself. So that allows us to position ourselves at a very close proximity to Microsoft to be able to stay on top of changes to the platform, upcoming releases and events, things like that. So it allows us to bring not only the marketing side to our partners that, frankly, we all know Microsoft does kind of a okay job. We'll be nice to Microsoft today. They do an okay job at marketing to the Dynamics community and partners specifically. So one of the strategic things that we've tried to do is really help partners better understand what Microsoft's bringing to the table, what changes are taking place, and what they can do with their customers, right? Because for most partners, that's the biggest hurdle, being able to supply marketing material. But the other side of that too is we've got offices in California, Kansas City, all up and down the eastern seaboard. We also have a team in Belgrade, Serbia. We have a team in India. So we're accustomed to working onshore, nearshore, and offshore. So we've got that level of communication. So when you talk about peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, we can write you a 50-page document on how to prepare a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So because we've done that work in the past, right? We've worked with a variety of different industries. We've got a lot of experience. And the thing that really helps us is we work with a lot of partners. And those partners are very specialized in the industry they work with. So the benefit to us is we get a lot of cross-vertical information that allows us to be very agile and flexible in bringing best practices to our partners' customers.
Thank you so much, Josh, for taking the time to visit with us and talk to our partners about all the great things that are going on and how they can still use it to generate a lot of revenue.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much, everybody. We really appreciate you taking the time to visit with us. See you next time.